My 3 children came together to tell me some news. Dad, we've arranged a nursing home for you. You'll be taken care of there. There are people your age, you'll have company. I packed my bag without saying a word. Listen to my story until the end, and tell me what city you're watching from. I'd like to know how far this story has traveled. My name is Gregory Pierce, and I'm 68 years old. For most of my life, I believed that a father's greatest achievement was raising good children. But I learned the hard way that, to my children, I was nothing more than a burden they no longer wanted to carry. It all started on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in March. The late winter sun filtered through my living room window, casting long shadows across the worn carpet where my grandkids used to play trucks and dolls. I was in my workshop corner, fixing Mrs. Henderson's old transistor radio, the smell of solder, and the familiar hum of electronics filling the air. My hands moved automatically. 40 years as an electrician and another 15 years tinkering in retirement had made these motions second nature. That radio meant something to Mrs. Henderson. Her late husband had given it to her for their 25th anniversary, and it had been playing their song every morning for 30 years until it finally gave out last week. She'd brought it to me with tears in her eyes, asking if there was any hope. "There's always hope when you know what you're doing," I told her. "Just needed a new capacitor and some patient work." I was just finishing the solder joint when I heard the front door open. 3 sets of footsteps, purposeful and coordinated. That's when all 3 of my kids walked in together, which almost never happened anymore. Not since Mary's funeral 10 years ago, when we were still a real family. Austin, my eldest at 48, walked in first. He had that contractor swagger that came from 20 years of running his own construction business. Work boots that had seen actual work, jeans with paint stains, tool belt hanging from his shoulder. I'd taught him to use those tools when he was 12, spending Saturday mornings in this same workshop, showing him the difference between a Phillips head and a flathead, how to read a level, why you measure twice and cut once. Diana followed, my only daughter at 45, still in her nurse scrubs from the hospital. The burgundy ones meant she'd been working the ICU again, dealing with life and death decisions that would break most people. I was proud of what she'd become, head nurse now, making a real difference. But somewhere along the way, that compassion she showed her patients had stopped extending to her old man. Nathan brought up the rear, my youngest at 40. He looked tired, older than his years. The war in Afghanistan had aged him in ways that went deeper than the lines around his eyes. He'd come back different, carrying invisible wounds that made it hard to hold jobs, hard to sleep through the night, hard to believe in much of anything. I understood that. Burdened better than he knew, Vietnam had left its own scars that took decades to fade. They sat down on my old brown couch, the one Mary and I had bought on payments back in 1985. She'd picked out that specific shade of brown because it wouldn't show dirt when the kids were small. The springs still creaked in the same spots, a symphony of family memories. Austin on the left where he used to watch cartoons, Diana in the middle where she'd do homework, Nathan on the right where he'd curl up during thunderstorms. They exchanged those looks, that silent language siblings develop when they're planning something their parent won't like. I'd seen it before, usually right before someone confessed to a broken window or a dented car. I set down my soldering iron carefully, making sure it was secure in its stand. Mary had always worried I'd burn the house down with my workshop habits, but in 40 years, I'd never had so much as a scorch mark. Electrical safety wasn't just my profession, it was my religion. "What's on your minds?" I asked, giving them my full attention. Austin cleared his throat first. He'd always been the spokesperson, the one who took charge when tough conversations needed to happen. "Dad, we need to talk about something important." He adjusted his collar like it was choking him, the same nervous gesture he'd had since he was 8 years old. I could feel it coming like a storm front moving in from the west. The air gets heavy, the birds stop singing, and you know you better find shelter fast. "We've been talking," Diana said, reaching over to take my hand. Her palms were soft from years of wearing medical gloves, nothing like mine, rough and scarred from decades of pulling wire through conduit and working with tools that didn't forgive carelessness. "About what?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Nathan kept staring at the carpet, at that old stain where he'd spilled grape juice when he was 8. His jaw was working like he was chewing on words he couldn't swallow. Then Austin dropped it, clean and direct, like he was explaining a construction problem to a homeowner. "Dad, we don't think you should live alone anymore." The words hit me like touching a live wire. that sudden shock that runs through your whole body and leaves you numb for a few seconds after. The silence stretched between us like a high-voltage line, dangerous and crackling with unspoken tension. I looked at each of their faces, searching for some sign that this was a joke, a misunderstanding, anything but what it sounded like. "It's not safe," Austin continued, his voice taking on that reasonable contractor tone he used when explaining why a job would cost more than expected. "Last week you left the soldering iron on when you went to bed. You could have burned the whole house down." I felt my chest tighten. "I didn't leave it on, Austin. I never leave it on, never have in 40 years. My voice stayed steady even though something cold was spreading through my stomach. "I always turn it off. Always check it twice." "Dad, it doesn't matter," he interrupted, waving his hand like he was dismissing a worker who'd made an excuse. "The point is, you're getting older and things happen. Memory slips, reflexes slow down. We can't watch over you 24/7. Diana squeezed my hand, and I could feel her palm getting sweaty. "Dad, this is for your own good." Those words again, the ones that always come before something terrible. "We all work full-time. Austin's got 3 job sites running, I'm pulling double shifts at the hospital, and Nathan?" She glanced at her younger brother. "Nathan's got his own challenges to deal with." I looked at Nathan, my youngest, my baby boy who used to crawl into bed with Mary and me during thunderstorms. He was still staring at that grape juice stain, his hands clasped so tight his knuckles were white. The kid who'd come home from Afghanistan, with pieces missing that no Purple Heart could replace. "What kind of place?" I asked quietly, though I already knew. My voice sounded strange in my own ears, like it was coming from somewhere far away. "It's called Sunset Manor," Diana said, and I could hear the guilt creeping into her voice. "We've toured it. It's really nice, Dad. You'll have people your age to talk to, nurses on duty around the clock, activities, meals prepared for you. Sunset Manor. I knew the place, a beige brick building on the east side of town that looked like a storage facility for people nobody wanted to think about. I'd driven past it countless times, seen the small windows, the parking lot full of rusted wheelchairs, the residents sitting in plastic chairs staring at nothing. "Activities," I repeated, testing the word like a foreign language. "What kind of activities?" "Bingo, movie nights, exercise classes," Austin said, reading from a brochure he'd pulled out of his jacket pocket. "Arts and crafts. They even have a little garden where residents can help with tomatoes and flowers." A little garden. I looked around my workshop, at the radio I'd been fixing, at the shelves lined with components and tools I'd collected over decades, at the photos on the wall, me and Charlie Henderson in our Army greens outside Da Nang in 1968. Both of us young and stupid and thinking we'd live forever. Mary on our wedding day in 1975, looking like an angel in white lace. The kids when they were small, missing teeth and gap-toothed grins, believing their dad could fix anything that was broken. "When?" I asked. They exchanged glances again, surprise flickering across their faces. They'd been expecting arguments, tears, pleading. Instead, I'd gone quiet in that way Mary used to say. Made her nervous because it meant I was thinking too hard about something. "This Saturday would work," Austin said carefully. "We can help you pack, drive you over, get you settled in. This Saturday, 4 days away. 4 days to say goodbye to the only life I'd ever known. And the house?" Another glance between them, and I knew. I'd walked right into their plan. "Well, Dad," Diana started, her nursing voice taking over, the gentle, reasonable tone she used when explaining to families why their loved one needed to stay in the ICU. "The house is just going to sit here empty. Property taxes, utilities, maintenance. It's a lot of money for a place nobody's living in. We figured it would be best to sell it," Austin said bluntly. "Split the money 3 ways, use your share to help cover the nursing home costs." Of course. The house Mary and I had bought with a VA loan in 1977, where we'd brought all 3 babies home from the hospital, where she'd planted roses along the front walk and I'd built a swing set in the backyard. The house I'd rewired twice, replumbed once, and painted so many times I'd lost count. The house that held 45 years of memories in every board and beam. They were going to sell it and split the money. I looked at Nathan again, and this time he looked back. For just a second, I saw the boy I'd taught to fish at Miller's Creek, the teenager I'd stayed up with during his nightmares after he came home from the war. His eyes were full of something that might have been shame or regret, or just exhaustion. "Is this what you all want?" I asked quietly. "Dad, Diana said, tears starting to well up. "We don't have a choice. We can't take care of you the way you need to be taken care of. Can't or won't." Austin's face hardened. "That's not fair, Dad. We've got our own families, our own responsibilities. This isn't about what we want. It's about what's practical." Practical. Like I was a broken appliance they were trading in for store credit. I stood up slowly, my joints protesting after sitting in the workshop chair for too long. My knees had been giving me trouble lately. Too many years climbing ladders and crawling through cramped spaces running electrical conduit. But I wasn't helpless. Not yet. "All right then," I said. "Saturday it is." The surprise on their faces was almost worth it. "Now, if you'll excuse me, Mrs. Henderson is expecting this radio back by tonight. And a man keeps his word." I picked up the soldering iron and went back to work, my hands steady as a surgeon's despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. They left quietly, like people sneaking out of a funeral. That night, I sat in my workshop until well past midnight, pretending to organize tools that were already perfectly organized. The truth was, I needed the familiar weight of my screwdrivers and pliers in my hands, needed the smell of machine oil and old wood to keep me grounded while my world tilted sideways. Mrs. Henderson's radio sat on the workbench, good as new. I'd replaced the capacitor, cleaned the contacts, and adjusted the tuning mechanism until it sang like a bird. Tomorrow, I'd walk it over to her house, and she'd cry a little when she heard her husband's voice coming through those speakers again. The DJ who'd played their wedding song every morning for 30 years until his voice finally gave out too. Some things were worth fixing. Some things deserved a second chance. I pulled out a beer from the little fridge I kept in the workshop. A luxury Mary had never approved of, but tolerated because she knew I needed somewhere to think. The bottle was cold against my palm, and I took a long pull before opening the drawer where I kept important papers. Bank statements, insurance policies, the deed to the house, and underneath everything else, the folder I'd never told my children about. 6 months ago, my old Army buddy Charlie Henderson had died. Massive heart attack at 67, dropped dead in his auto parts store in Columbus, while arguing with a supplier about spark plug prices. Charlie had been my squad leader in Vietnam, the guy who'd pulled me out of a burning APC outside Da Nang when I was too stunned from a mortar blast to move. He'd saved my life, and we'd stayed close ever after. Charlie never married, never had kids, poured everything into building up Henderson Auto Parts into a 3-state operation. When his lawyer called me a week after the funeral, I figured maybe Charlie had left me his Purple Heart or some memento from the war. Instead, he'd left me everything. $750,000 in the bank, plus his life insurance, plus his veterans benefits that somehow transferred to his next of kin, me. Close to $1 million sitting in an account I'd opened but never touched. The letter from Charlie was handwritten in his careful block letters, the same way he used to write reports for our CO. "Greg, you're the closest thing to family I ever had. You saved my ass in more ways than one over the years, and I figure it's time I return the favor. Don't let those kids of yours know about this until you're damn sure they deserve it. Money changes people, and not always for the better. Use this to take care of yourself the way you took care of everyone else your whole life. Semper Fi, brother." I'd kept the secret for 6 months, watching my children, waiting to see if there was any real love left underneath their busy schedules and financial stress. Part of me had hoped they'd surprise me, show up for Sunday dinners again, call just to check on their old man. Instead, they'd surprise me in a different way entirely. I finished my beer and walked through the house one more time, seeing it through their eyes. The furniture was old but solid. Mary had insisted on buying quality pieces that would last. The carpet had some stains, but plenty of life left in it. The kitchen appliances worked fine, even if they weren't stainless steel. The plumbing I'd installed myself. The electrical I'd upgraded to code. This wasn't the house of a man who couldn't take care of himself. This was the house of a man whose children had decided he was inconvenient. In the bedroom, I opened Mary's jewelry box and touched her wedding ring, the simple gold band I'd bought with my first electrician's paycheck. She'd worn it every day for 32 years until cancer took her. I'd offered to bury it with her, but she'd made me promise to give it to Diana someday when she was ready for something that mattered more than what it cost. Looking at Diana today, I realized that day might never come. I packed methodically, the way the Army had taught me. One small suitcase, enough clothes for a week, basic toiletries, the medications that kept my blood pressure stable. At the bottom, underneath the folded underwear, I placed Charlie's folder, my insurance policy, my secret weapon, my ticket to the last lesson I'd ever teach my children. Thursday morning, I called Samuel Rodriguez, Charlie's lawyer. Sam was a good man, another vet who'd served in Gulf War and understood the brotherhood that tied old soldiers together. Sam, it's Greg Pierce. I need your help with something. What can I do for you, Greg? My children are putting me in a nursing home this Saturday. Place called Sunset Manor. I want you to look into it. Who owns it? What kind of financial shape it's in? There was a pause. Greg, are you sure about this? If you need help fighting it? I'm not fighting anything, I said. I'm going exactly where they want me to go. But first, I need to know who's running the place they're sending me to. Sam was quiet for a moment. What are you thinking? I'm thinking my children are about to learn that you should never underestimate a man who's survived 2 tours in Vietnam and 40 years in the electrical trade. I'll make some calls, Sam said. Give me 24 hours. And Sam, start looking into shell companies, something discreet that can handle real estate transactions without anybody knowing who's behind them. Jesus, Greg, what are you planning? Justice, I said. The kind that takes time to build, but lasts forever once it's finished. Friday evening, Sam called back. Greg, you're not going to believe what I found. Try me. Sunset Manor is owned by a guy named Dr. Morris through something called Pinnacle Holdings. The place is hemorrhaging money. State violations, lawsuits, deferred maintenance. Morris is desperate to sell before the state shuts him down. How desperate? Fire sale desperate. I could probably get it for $400,000 cash, maybe less. I smiled for the first time since Tuesday. Do it. Set up a shell company, something that can't be traced back to me. And Sam, I want you to appraise my house too. My kids are going to try to sell it once they've got me tucked away. Greg, trust me on this one, Sam. By the time I'm done, my children are going to understand exactly what they've thrown away. Saturday morning came gray and cold, with the kind of drizzle that chills you to the bone. I was ready. Saturday morning came gray and cold, with the kind of drizzle that chills you to the bone. I was ready, sitting in my workshop with my single suitcase beside me, waiting for the sound of Austin's truck in the driveway. They arrived right on time, 10 a.m. sharp, like they were picking up a delivery. Austin's F-150 rumbled to a stop outside, followed by Diana's Honda SUV. Through the window, I watched them sit in their vehicles for a moment, gathering courage, or maybe just trying to figure out how to do this without looking like the worst people in the world. Austin came to the door first, work boots heavy on the porch steps I'd repaired just last summer. Morning, Dad. You ready? Ready as I'll ever be, I said, standing up and dusting off my hands. I'd been pretending to organize one last time, but really I was just trying to memorize every detail of this place. The way the morning light came through the east window, the smell of coffee and WD-40, the comfortable chaos of a workshop that had seen 15 years of projects. Diana came in behind Austin, followed by Nathan, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Nathan had always been sensitive, even as a kid. He felt things deeper than his siblings, which made him both the most loving and the most wounded of my children. You don't have much stuff, Diana observed, looking at my single suitcase. Don't need much, I said. At my age, you learn the difference between what you want and what you actually need. Austin hefted the suitcase, surprised by how light it was. This is it. This is it. I didn't mention the folder at the bottom, or what it contained. Some secrets are worth keeping. I walked through the house one more time, touching the banister Mary had polished every week, running my fingers along the kitchen counter where we'd shared 32 years of morning coffee. In the living room, I stopped at the mantelpiece and picked up the photo of Mary on our wedding day. Her smile could have powered half the town. You taking that? Nathan asked softly. No, I said, setting it back down gently. She belongs here. This was her home. Nathan's face twisted like he was in physical pain. For a second, I thought he might change his mind, might tell his siblings they were making a mistake. But Austin was already heading for the door, keys jingling in his hand like a jailer. The ride to Sunset Manor was quiet, except for the radio playing some pop country song about better days. Diana tried to make conversation about the weather, about how nice the facility would be, about anything except what we were actually doing. Austin drove with both hands gripping the wheel, focused on the road like he was navigating through a minefield. Nathan stared out the window at the passing neighborhoods, at the houses where normal families were having normal Saturday mornings. Kids playing in yards, fathers washing cars, mothers hanging laundry, all the simple, ordinary moments that make a life worth living. Sunset Manor looked exactly like what it was, a warehouse for people nobody wanted to think about. The parking lot was cracked asphalt with weeds growing through. The building itself a squat rectangle of beige brick that could have been a low-security prison. Small windows like suspicious eyes, watching everyone who came and went. The smell hit us as soon as we walked through the front doors. Industrial disinfectant, trying to mask something deeper and sadder. The smell of people waiting to die. The lobby was all worn linoleum and fluorescent lights, with a TV blaring some game show at a volume that hurt your ears. Residents sat in plastic chairs around the edges of the room, staring at nothing, or each other, or the past they couldn't quite remember. Behind a desk that looked like it belonged in a used car lot, sat a woman in a wrinkled uniform, working a crossword puzzle with the dedication of someone trying to ignore everything else happening around her. "We're here to drop off Gregory Pierce," Austin said, his contractor voice making it sound like a delivery. "Room 12, she replied without looking up. "You'll be sharing with Mr. Kowalski. He doesn't talk much, keeps to himself." Room 12 was down a hallway that seemed to stretch forever. Past doors that were mostly closed, behind which people lived out their final chapters in rooms that all looked exactly the same. The walls were painted that particular shade of institutional green that's supposed to be calming, but just looks like giving up. My room was about the size of my workshop back home, with 2 narrow beds, metal lockers that had seen better decades, and 1 small window that looked out at a dumpster and a chain-link fence. On one bed sat an elderly man with thinning white hair, wearing pajamas at 10:30 in the morning and staring at the wall like it might tell him secrets if he looked long enough. "Mr. Kowalski," Austin said, like he was introducing business associates. The old man glanced over, nodded once, then went back to his wall watching. Austin set my suitcase on the empty bed. Diana arranged my few toiletries on the metal nightstand, with the careful precision of someone trying to make a prison cell look homey. Nathan stood in the doorway, hands shoved deep in his pockets, looking like he might bolt at any second. "Well, Dad," Austin said, clapping his hands together like he'd just finished installing a ceiling fan. "You're all set." "We've got errands to run," Diana added quickly, already backing toward the door. "We'll call you in a few days, see how you're settling in." Nathan was last. He approached slowly, like he was walking through a minefield. When he got close enough, I could see his eyes were red-rimmed. "I'm sorry, Dad," he whispered, so quietly his siblings couldn't hear. "I know you are, son," I said, and I meant it. Nathan had always been the most honest of my children, even when honesty hurt. Then they were gone, and I was alone in room 12 with Mr. Kowalski and the sound of my own heartbeat. I stood there for a long time after they left, listening to the sounds of Sunset Manor settling around me like a house with bad bones. Somewhere down the hall, a woman was calling out for someone named Robert. A TV was playing too loud in the common room. The heating system coughed and wheezed like an old man with emphysema. Mr. Kowalski finally looked up from his wall staring. "You there first?" "There first." "What?" "First parent they put in this place." His voice was gravelly from years of cigarettes, but his eyes were sharp. I can always tell. The ones who fight it, scream and cry and beg to go home, and the ones like you, who go quiet because they're planning something. I sat down on my bed, testing the mattress. It was thin as a communion wafer, with springs that creaked like old porch steps. What makes you think I'm planning something? 40 years as a machinist. You learn to read people the same way you read blueprints. Everything's got a purpose, even when it don't look like it. He shifted on his bed, and I could see the outline of tools under his blanket. Name's Stanley Kowalski, like the guy in the movie. Most folks here call me Stan, Gregory Pierce. Most folks call me Greg. Well, Greg, welcome to the end of the line, or what your kids think is the end of the line. Over the next few days, I learned the rhythm of Sunset Manor. Breakfast at 7 a.m., watery oatmeal and coffee that tasted like it had been filtered through a gym sock. Morning medications dispensed by nurses who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. An hour in the common room, watching The Price is Right, at a volume that could wake the dead. Lunch was thin soup and sandwiches made with the kind of lunch meat that came in 5-pound tubes. Dinner was whatever the kitchen could make cheaply in large quantities. overcooked chicken, mashed potatoes from a box, green beans that had given up all hope of being green. The staff was a mix of saints and sinners. Some, like Patricia Williams, the day shift supervisor, genuinely cared about the residents. She had worked in veteran care facilities for 20 years and treated every old soldier like he was her own father. Others, like Dr. Morris, the administrator, saw dollar signs instead of human beings. Dr. Morris was a thin, nervous man in his 50s who dressed like he was trying to sell you a used car. He made rounds once a week, checking clipboards and asking questions nobody cared about the answers to. The residents were afraid of him, and the staff walked on eggshells when he was around. I kept my head down and my eyes open. Every morning, I'd walk the halls like I was getting exercise. But really, I was learning the layout, listening to conversations, figuring out how this place worked. During afternoon activities, I'd sit in on the current events discussions and listen to the other residents talk about their families, their former lives, their disappointments. Most of them had stories like mine. Children who visited less and less frequently until they stopped coming altogether. Grandchildren who didn't know their names. Lives that had been full of purpose and meaning, reduced to waiting for meals and medications. But I also learned something else. Sunset Manor was falling apart financially. The state had cited them for multiple violations. Understaffing, poor food quality, maintenance issues that had been ignored for years. Dr. Morris was cutting corners everywhere he could, and it showed. The real break came 3 weeks after I arrived. I was in the small library, really just a closet with some donated books and old magazines, when I overheard Patricia Williams on the phone with someone. "I don't care what Dr. Morris says, we need more staff," she was saying. "I've got 45 residents and 3 nurses for the evening shift. It's not safe, and it's not right. No, I won't just make do. These people deserve better than that." When she hung up, she noticed me sitting in the corner with a 10-year-old copy of Popular Mechanics. "I'm sorry you had to hear that, Mr. Pierce. We're going through some growing pains." "Growing pains or dying pains?" I asked. She looked surprised by my directness. "Excuse me? I've been around long enough to recognize when something's held together with duct tape and prayers. This place is in trouble, isn't it?" Patricia glanced around to make sure we were alone, then sat down across from me. "Between you and me, Dr. Morris has been running this facility into the ground for 3 years. He's got investors breathing down his neck, the state ready to shut us down, and staff quitting every week because they can't stand watching what's happening to you folks. What would it take to fix it? New ownership, for starters. Someone who gives a damn about more than profit margins. This place used to be decent, back when the Henderson family ran it. But they sold out to Morris 5 years ago, and it's been downhill ever since. Henderson. The name hit me like an electrical shock. The Henderson family? Yeah, old man Henderson built this place back in the 70s. His son Charlie ran it until he died about 6 months ago. That's when Morris swooped in with some investment group and bought it cheap. Charlie Henderson. My Charlie, my squad leader, my brother in arms. The man who'd left me close to $1 million had also built the place where his final gift would be most needed. The irony was so perfect it made me laugh out loud. "Something funny, Mr. Pierce?" "Just thinking about how small the world really is," I said. That night, I called Sam Rodriguez from the payphone in the lobby, feeding quarters into the slot, like I was playing a slot machine with my children's future. "Sam, it's Greg. How's the shell company coming along?" "All set up. Veterans Community Care LLC, with a P.O. box and a bank account. What do you need?" "I want you to make Dr. Morris an offer he can't refuse. Cash deal, immediate closing, no inspections. Whatever it takes to get him to sign papers fast." "How much are we talking?" "Start at $350,000 and go up to $500,000 if you have to. The man's desperate, so he'll probably take the first offer that gets him out of debt." "Jesus, Greg, you're really doing this. I'm really doing this. And Sam, I want you to hire Patricia Williams as the new administrator. She's the only person in this place who actually gives a damn about the residents." "What about Dr. Morris? What about him?" "He's fired the second the papers are signed, along with anyone else who thinks taking care of elderly people is just a way to make easy money." I hung up the phone and walked back to room 12, where Stan Kowalski was lying in his bed, staring at the ceiling. "You look like a man who just won the lottery," he said, without looking at me. "Something like that," I said. "Good. This place could use some winning for a change." 2 weeks later, Sam called with news. "It's done, Greg." Dr. Morris practically threw the keys at me. "Sunset Manor now belongs to Veterans Community Care LLC. You own this place." Phase 1 was complete. Now it was time for Phase 2. The first thing I did as the new owner of Sunset Manor was absolutely nothing. For 2 weeks I continued my routine, shuffling to meals, sitting in the common room, playing the part of just another forgotten old man waiting to die. But now I was watching everything with different eyes, taking mental notes about what needed to change. Dr. Morris didn't last long once Sam's lawyers got involved. He cleaned out his office on a Wednesday morning, loading boxes into his BMW, while muttering about ungrateful investors and impossible working conditions. The staff watched him leave, with the kind of relief you see when a thunderstorm finally passes. Patricia Williams got the call that afternoon. Sam had offered her the administrator position with a 40% salary increase and a budget to actually fix the problems she'd been fighting for years. When she told me the news, I made sure to look appropriately surprised. "New ownership?" I asked, sitting in my usual spot in the library corner, some veteran care company out of Columbus. Apparently, they specialize in turning around failing facilities. Patricia was practically glowing with excitement. "Mr. Pierce, they're giving me carte blanche to hire proper staff, upgrade the food service, fix the maintenance issues. It's like Christmas morning. Sounds too good to be true." That's what I thought, but their lawyer seems legit. Says they want to make this a model facility for veteran care. Apparently, the new owner is a Vietnam vet himself, understands what it means to take care of people who served their country. I nodded sagely. "Well, you deserve it. You're the only person around here who treats us like human beings instead of inventory." Within a month, Sunset Manor was transformed. Patricia hired 2 new nurses and doubled the kitchen staff. The menu changed from institutional slop to actual food. Pot roast on Sundays, fresh vegetables, coffee you could drink without wincing. She brought in a maintenance crew to fix the broken heating system and replace the fluorescent lights with something that didn't make everyone look like corpses. The residents began to come alive. Mrs. Miller, who hadn't spoken to anyone in months, started joining the conversation during current events. Mr. Williams, a retired teacher, began organizing book discussions in the library. Even Stan Kowalski emerged from his shell, sharing stories about his 40 years at the Westinghouse plant and offering to fix anything that was broken. "You know what's funny?" Stan said one evening as we sat in the newly renovated common room watching the Cardinals game on a TV that actually had decent picture quality. "This new owner, whoever he is, he's got to be losing money hand over fist with all these improvements. Maybe he's got money to burn," I suggested. "Or maybe he understands something Dr. Morris never did. You can't put a price on treating people with dignity." Stan was right about the money. The improvements were expensive, but Charlie's inheritance could handle it. More importantly, seeing the change in the residents' faces was worth every penny. These were people who'd spent their lives working hard, raising families, contributing to their communities. They deserve better than to warehouse them away like broken furniture. Meanwhile, my children were busy with their own lives, oblivious to the fact that the man they had discarded was quietly rebuilding the world around them. Through Mrs. Henderson, my old neighbor who visited every few weeks, I heard about their activities. Austin was struggling with his construction business. Several jobs had gone bad, clients weren't paying, and his new truck was spending more time in the repair shop than on job sites. Diana was pulling extra shifts at the hospital because her husband was still unemployed and the stress was showing. Nathan was drinking again, unable to hold down even part-time work. But they had my house to solve their problems. The for sale sign went up in my front yard on a gray Tuesday morning in October. Mrs. Henderson called to tell me about it, her voice full of indignation. "Gregory, I can't believe they're doing this. That house has been your home for 45 years. How much are they asking? $165,000, which seems low to me. The Johnson's place down the street sold for $200,000 last month." I wasn't surprised. Austin would want a quick sale to get cash fast, even if it meant leaving money on the table. Through Sam, I'd already had the house appraised. It was worth at least $230,000 in the current market, maybe more with some updating. "Mrs. Henderson, I need you to do me a favor. Keep an eye on who's looking at the house, what kind of interest they're getting." "Of course, dear. Are you thinking of trying to buy it back somehow?" Something like that. 2 weeks later, Sam called with an update on the house situation. Greg, your kid's got an offer. $140,000 cash, immediate closing. The buyer wants to skip inspections, close in 30 days. Who's the buyer? Midwest Property Solutions. LLC, they sent a cashier's check for earnest money with the offer. I smiled. Midwest Property Solutions was the second shell company Sam had set up for me. My children were about to sell their father's house to their father for $90,000 less than it was worth, and they didn't have a clue. Are they going to take it? According to the realtor, they're thrilled. Apparently, Austin said it was like winning the lottery. No hassles, no inspections, cash in hand in 30 days. The closing was scheduled for November 15th. Austin, Diana, and Nathan would each walk away with $46,666 after closing costs and realtor fees. They'd split up $140,000 of my money from Charlie's inheritance to buy a house I already owned at a $90,000 discount from its real value. The irony was so perfect, I had to share it with someone. Stan, I said that evening as we sat in our room reading, him with a woodworking magazine, me with a book about electrical systems. What would you say if I told you I was about to teach 3 ungrateful people the most expensive lesson of their lives? Stan looked up from his magazine. I'd say it's about time someone around here had some fun. What kind of lesson? The kind that shows them exactly what they threw away when they threw away their old man. Sounds like my kind of justice. Slow cooked and served cold. The best kind, I agreed. November 15th couldn't come fast enough. November 15th came with the first real snow of the winter, fat flakes that covered the world in clean white silence. I sat by my window watching it fall, thinking about how snow makes everything look new and peaceful, even when underneath it's the same old mess it was before. At 2 p.m., my 3 children were sitting in a lawyer's office downtown, signing papers to sell their father's house to a shell company owned by their father. Sam had arranged everything perfectly. The closing was handled by a different law firm, with documents that showed nothing more than corporate entities transferring property for cash. Austin would be doing most of the talking, playing the role of family spokesperson like he always did. Diana would be emotional, but trying to hide it, probably tearing up when she signed the deed. Nathan would be quiet, just wanting it over with, so he could go find a bar somewhere. By 3 p.m., it was done. They walked out of that office with checks totaling $150,000. Thinking they'd solved their financial problems. What they'd really done was sell me my own house back at a $90,000 discount. Stan found me in the common room that evening, grinning like he'd just heard the world's best joke. "You look like a man who just got some good news," he said, settling into the chair next to mine. "The best kind of news," I said, justice served with a side of irony. "Your kids sell the house?" I nodded. "Close this afternoon. They're probably out celebrating right now, spending money they think they earned. How long before they figure out what really happened? That depends on how fast they burn through the cash. Based on what I know about their spending habits, I'd say 6 months, maybe less." And I was right. Through Mrs. Henderson and the local gossip network, I tracked their spending like a general monitoring enemy troop movements. Austin bought a brand new F-350 Super Duty truck, the kind with enough chrome and options to feed a small country. He also purchased a set of high-end power tools and rented a bigger workshop space, convinced that better equipment would solve his business problems. Diana used her share to completely renovate their kitchen again. Apparently, the first renovation hadn't been done right. New granite countertops, custom cabinets, commercial-grade appliances. She took out a second mortgage to finish the job, confident that Austin's construction business would turn around, and they could pay it off quickly. Nathan's money disappeared the fastest. A fishing boat, a 4-wheeler, a vacation to Florida with some buddies from his Army unit. He lived like a man who thought the money would never run out, because he'd never learned the difference between having money and earning money. None of them saved a dime. None of them invested in anything that would generate future income. None of them thought about what they'd do when it was gone, and none of them came to visit. Christmas came and went without so much as a phone call. New Year's passed the same way. My birthday in February brought a card from Diana with a generic message about hoping I was well, but no visit, no call, no attempt to actually find out how I was doing. Meanwhile, life at Sunset Manor continued to improve. Patricia had transformed the place into something that actually lived up to its name. The dining room served real meals prepared by cooks who cared about flavor and nutrition. The activity schedule included things people actually wanted to do. Woodworking classes with Stan as the instructor, a garden club that was planning a full vegetable garden for spring, movie nights with films from the 1940s and 50s that the residents actually remembered. I'd started helping in the workshop Patricia had set up in what used to be a storage room. Having spent my life working with my hands, it felt good to be useful again, helping other residents fix radios, lamps, small appliances, the kinds of things that made the difference between a room and a home. You know, Patricia said one afternoon as we were reviewing the month's budget in her office, whoever owns this place really understands what it means to care for people. The board approval for every improvement comes back within 24 hours, always approved, no questions about cost. Maybe they trust your judgment, I suggested. Or maybe they understand that you can't put a price on dignity. Either way, it's refreshing to work for people who prioritize care over profit. If only she knew she was working for the man in room 12 who fixed her coffee maker last week. Spring arrived early that year, with crocuses poking through the snow in March, and the maple trees budding before the calendar said they should. I was working in the garden with the other residents, planning what to plant where, when Mrs. Henderson came for one of her monthly visits. "Gregory," she said, settling onto the bench Patricia had installed near the flower beds, "I've got some news about your old place." "Oh? Those new owners, Midwest Property Solutions, they've been fixing it up. New roof, fresh paint, landscaping, making it look better than it has in years. Whoever they are, they're putting some serious money into it." I smiled, pushing my hands deeper into the rich soil. "That's good to hear. The old place deserves some attention. There's something else. Your Austin came by last week, asking if I knew anything about the new owners. Said he was curious about who bought the family home. What did you tell him?" "Nothing, because I don't know anything. But Gregory, he looked rough, like he's been having a hard time lately." I wasn't surprised. Through Sam, I'd been keeping track of their financial situations. Austin's construction business was hemorrhaging money. The new truck payments, the expensive tools he couldn't afford, the bigger workshop rent. He'd taken on jobs he wasn't qualified for and lost money on everyone. Diana's kitchen renovation had cost twice what she'd budgeted, and her husband was still unemployed. They were behind on their mortgage and credit card payments, living paycheck to paycheck despite her nursing supervisor's salary. Nathan had blown through his share in 4 months and was back to drinking heavily. He'd been fired from 2 part-time jobs and was staying in a weekly rate motel near the interstate. The money from selling their father's house, money that should have been their inheritance, their security, their chance to build something lasting, was gone, all of it, spent on temporary pleasures and poor decisions. And now they were about to learn what real financial pressure felt like. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in May, while I was in the workshop helping Stan repair a radio that belonged to Mrs. Miller. The afternoon nurse found me there, said I had a visitor at the front desk. It was Diana, standing in the lobby with that particular look nurses get when they're about to deliver bad news. She was still in her scrubs from the night shift, dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. When she saw me coming down the hall, she forced a smile that didn't reach anywhere near her eyes. "Hi, Dad. You look good. Really good." "I feel good," I said, which was the truth. This place has been treating me well. She glanced around the lobby, taking in the fresh paint, the comfortable chairs, the residents who were actually talking to each other instead of staring at walls. "It looks different. Better than when we brought you here." "New management," I said. "They seem to care more about the people than the profit." We sat in the small visiting area Patricia had set up near the garden windows. Diana fidgeted with her purse strap, opening and closing the clasp like it was a nervous habit she'd picked up. "Dad, I need to ask you something. I'm listening." "Things have been really hard lately. The kitchen renovation went over budget. David's still unemployed, and I'm working double shifts just to keep up. With the mortgage payments," she paused, gathering courage. "I was wondering if maybe you could help us out. Just a small loan from your pension or Social Security. We'd pay you back as soon as David finds work." There it was, the real reason for the visit after 18 months of silence. "How much do you need?" I asked. $5,000 would help. 10 would solve everything. Her eyes were bright with desperate hope. "I know it sounds like a lot, but we're family. Family helps family." I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who used to climb onto my lap when she was 5 and ask me to read her stories about princesses and dragons. The same woman who'd stood in my living room 18 months ago and told me it was for my own good. Diana, sweetheart, what happened to the money from selling the house? Her face went red. That was different. That was for settling your affairs, getting you set up here. Settling my affairs? I thought that money was supposed to help with my care here. Did it help with my care? She looked away. Dad, please. I wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. The answer is no. The words hung between us like smoke from a house fire. Diana's face went through several emotions: surprise, hurt, anger, and finally something that looked like panic. No? But Dad, you're my father. You're supposed to help when your children are in trouble. Am I? I stood up slowly, my joints protesting the long morning in the workshop. Tell me something, Diana. When was the last time you visited me before today? When was the last time you called just to see how I was doing? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I'll save you the math. It's been 18 months. 18 months since you dropped me off here, like I was a piece of furniture you didn't want anymore. And now you show up because you need money. That's not fair, Dad. I work long hours. I have responsibilities. So did I. For 40 years, I worked long hours and had responsibilities. But I still found time for my children. Even after your mother died and I was working double shifts and trying to raise 3 teenagers by myself, I made time. Diana started crying. The quiet kind of crying that nurses learn to do when they don't want patients to see them break down. Dad, I'm sorry. I know we should have visited more, called more, but we thought you were settled here, that you were okay. Settled, that's an interesting word. I sat back down, but kept some distance between us. You know what settled means to someone my age? It means waiting to die. Is that what you thought I was doing here? No, we just thought, you thought you'd solved a problem. The problem of having an aging father who might need attention, might interfere with your busy lives. So, you put me somewhere safe and forgot about me. She wiped her eyes with a tissue from her purse. It wasn't like that. What was it like then? She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I was scared. When Mom died, you were so strong, held everything together. But lately you seemed fragile, old, and I didn't know how to handle that. None of us did. It was the most honest thing she'd said since she'd arrived. So instead of learning how to handle it, you decided to make it someone else's problem. Yes. The word came out like a confession. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I looked at her sitting there in her wrinkled scrubs, this woman who saved lives for a living, but couldn't figure out how to love her father. And I felt something inside me soften. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the possibility of it someday. Diana, I want you to listen to me carefully. I'm not your retirement plan. I'm not your emergency fund. I'm not your solution to problems you created for yourselves. I'm your father, and for the past 1.5 years, you've treated me like I was already dead. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. If you want a relationship with me, if you want to be part of my life, then start acting like it. Visit because you miss me, not because you need something. Call because you want to hear my voice, not because you're desperate for money. Is there a chance to fix this? I stood up again. That's up to you. But it starts with understanding that respect isn't something you can buy. It's something you earn. I walked away, leaving her sitting in that chair with her tears and her empty checkbook. And for the first time in 18 months, I felt like her father again, instead of her victim. 2 months later, they all came at once. I was working in the garden behind Sunset Manor on a hot July afternoon, tending to the tomato plants that had grown tall and heavy with fruit. The summer heat reminded me of Vietnam, but in a good way. The smell of rich earth and growing things instead of jungle rot and fear. Stan was with me, carefully staking bean plants with the precision of a man who'd spent 40 years making sure everything was perfectly aligned. Company coming, he said, without looking up from his work. I followed his gaze to see Austin's new truck pulling into the parking lot, followed by Diana's SUV. Through the garden fence, I watched them get out and stand together for a moment. Like soldiers preparing for a mission they weren't sure they'd survive. All 3 of them, Stan observed. That's either very good or very bad. In my experience, when all your children show up unannounced, it's usually because they need something. You gonna see what they want? I finished tying off a tomato branch and wiped my hands on my pants. Might as well get it over with. They were waiting in the lobby when I came in, and the change in them was dramatic. Austin had lost weight, his face drawn and pale. The confident contractor swagger was gone, replaced by the slumped shoulders of a man who'd been beaten down by circumstances he couldn't control. Diana looked exhausted, older than her 45 years. Nathan stood apart from his siblings, sober but fragile, like a man walking on ice that might crack at any moment. "Dad," Austin started, then stopped, seeming to forget what he'd planned to say. "Let's sit in the garden," I said. "It's cooler outside." We went to the picnic area Patricia had installed last spring, with tables under shade trees and flower beds that drew butterflies and bees. Other residents were scattered around, reading, playing cards, enjoying the afternoon. It looked like a place where people actually lived instead of just waiting to die. "This place is incredible," Diana said, looking around at the gardens, the fresh paint, the obvious signs that someone cared about this facility. "It's home," I said simply. Austin cleared his throat. "Dad, we need to talk about something serious." Here we go, I thought. Round 2. "I'm listening." "Things have gotten really bad for all of us. My business is basically bankrupt. I'm behind on truck payments. I had to give up the workshop lease, and I've got creditors calling every day." Austin's voice was flat, defeated. "Diana's about to lose her house, and Nathan—" He looked at his younger brother, who was staring at the ground like he was ashamed to meet anyone's eyes. "Nathan's been staying in his car for the past 2 weeks, Diana finished quietly. I felt a twist in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. "That's unfortunate." "Dad," Diana said, leaning forward, "we know we've been terrible children. We know we abandoned you when you needed us most, and we're sorry. But we're desperate. We're family, and families help each other." "Do they?" I asked. "Because 18 months ago, when you put me in this place, I don't remember getting much help from my family." Austin's face flushed red. "We thought we were helping. We thought this was the best place for you." "No, you thought this was the most convenient place for you. There's a difference." "Okay, yes!" Austin exploded, his contractor's temper finally breaking through. "You're right. We were selfish and we were wrong, but punishing us isn't going to change anything. We're your children, for Christ's sake." "Are you?" I looked at each of them in turn. "Because children visit their parents. Children call to check on them. Children don't disappear for 18 months and only show up when they need money." Nathan finally spoke, his voice barely audible. "Dad, I know I screwed up. I know we all screwed up. But I'm clean now, 60 days sober. I've been going to meetings, talking to counselors. I want to get my life back." I studied his face, looking for signs of the lies that had come so easily when he was drinking. But his eyes were clear, and there was something different about him, a humility that hadn't been there before. "That's good to hear, Nathan. How are you planning to stay clean while living in your car?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I'm just taking it one day at a time." "And you two?" I turned to Austin and Diana. "What's your plan?" "We don't have one," Diana said. "That's why we're here. We're drowning, Dad." I stood up and walked over to the flower bed, examining the roses that bloomed despite the summer heat. These were the same variety Mary had planted at our house 30 years ago. I'd brought cuttings when I first arrived here, and Patricia had let me plant them in memory of my wife. "You know what I learned living here?" I said, not turning around. "I learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up when things get hard. It's about who cares whether you're alive or dead on any given Tuesday." I turned back to face them. "For 18 months, none of you showed up. None of you cared. You sold my house, split the money, and forgot I existed. We can't change that," Austin said. "But we can change what happens next." "Can you? Because from where I sit, it looks like you only care about me when you need something. First it was convenient to put me away. Now it's convenient to ask for help. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Nathan stood up. "Dad, I don't deserve your help. None of us do. But I'm asking anyway, not because I think you owe us anything, but because I don't know where else to turn." His honesty cut through my anger like a knife. For just a moment, I saw the little boy who used to have nightmares, who would climb into bed with Mary and me, seeking comfort from monsters that only he could see. "What exactly are you asking for?" "A chance," Nathan said. "A chance to prove we can be better than we've been." I looked at the three of them, broken, desperate, finally understanding what they'd thrown away. And I made a decision that would change everything. "I'm going to make you an offer," I said, sitting back down at the picnic table. "But it's not what you think." They leaned forward like drowning people reaching for a life preserver. "I'm not going to give you money. I'm not going to bail you out of the mess you made. But I will give you something more valuable, a chance to earn your way back into my life." Austin's face darkened. "What's that supposed to mean? It means if you want my help, you're going to work for it. This place is always looking for good people. Austin, you're a contractor. Our maintenance department could use someone who knows electrical and plumbing. Diana, you're a nurse. We need qualified medical staff. Nathan, our groundskeeping crew could use another man." The silence was deafening. Austin's face went through several shades of red before settling on purple. "You want us to work here? In a nursing home? I want you to understand what it means to earn something, instead of expecting it to be handed to you. The pay isn't great, but it's honest work. You'd have healthcare benefits, and Nathan could get help with housing through the Employee Assistance Program." "This is humiliating," Austin muttered. "More humiliating than declaring bankruptcy? More humiliating than losing your house? More humiliating than living in your car?" I looked at each of them. Pride is a luxury you can't afford right now. Diana was the first to speak. "What would we be doing?" "Exactly. Austin would handle repairs, maintenance, minor electrical work. Diana would work with our nursing staff. We're always short-handed. Nathan would maintain the grounds, help in the garden, general labor." "For how long?" Nathan asked. "For as long as it takes for you to prove you understand the value of family, the importance of showing up, and the difference between wanting something and earning it." Austin stood up abruptly. "This is crazy. You're asking us to throw away our careers to work minimum wage jobs in an old folks' home. I'm offering you a chance to rebuild your lives and your relationship with your father. If that's not worth swallowing your pride, then you never understood what family means in the first place." Austin looked at his siblings, then back at me. "I can't do this. I won't humiliate myself like this." He stormed off toward his truck, leaving Diana and Nathan sitting at the table. "Austin, wait," Diana called, but he was already driving away. Nathan watched his brother leave, then turned back to me. "When can I start?" The question hung in the air like morning mist. Diana looked shocked. "Nathan, are you serious?" "Dead serious." Nathan's voice was steady for the first time in years. "Dad's right. We threw him away when it was convenient, and now we expect him to save us when it's convenient. That's not family. That's just using people." He looked at me directly. "I know I don't deserve another chance. But if you're willing to give me one, I'll take it, and I'll work harder than I've ever worked in my life to earn it." I felt something crack open in my chest, some wall I'd built to protect myself from more disappointment. "Patricia Williams is the administrator. Tell her Greg Pierce recommended you for the groundskeeper position. But, Nathan, you show up drunk even once, you're gone. No second chances on that. I won't let you down, Dad." Diana was crying quietly. "What about me? What about you? I know I don't deserve it either, but I miss you. I miss having a father. I miss feeling like I belong somewhere." I looked at her for a long moment. The nursing department is always looking for experienced ICU nurses, but you'd be starting at the bottom, working regular floor shifts, following orders from people younger than you. I don't care. I just want my family back. And that's how I got 2 of my 3 children back. Nathan started work the following Monday. I watched from my window as he arrived early, stayed late, and threw himself into the job like his life depended on it. He moved into a small apartment in town with help from the Employee Assistance Program and attended AA meetings 3 nights a week. Diana took a little longer to make the transition. She had to give notice at the hospital and arranged to rent out her house to avoid foreclosure. But within a month, she was working the day shift at Sunset Manor, and for the first time in years, she seemed genuinely happy. They visited me regularly now, not because they needed anything, but because they wanted to spend time with their father. We ate dinner together twice a week in the dining room, and gradually, we learned how to be a family again. Austin never came back. Through the grapevine, I heard he'd moved to another state, still chasing the dream of easy money and quick fixes. Maybe someday he'd figure out what his siblings had learned. Maybe not. I couldn't force him to grow up. 6 months after that day in the garden, I called my children into Patricia's office for a meeting. They came nervously, probably thinking they were in trouble. "I have something to tell you both," I said, with Patricia and Sam Rodriguez present as witnesses. "Nathan, Diana, I want you to know that I own this place. The looks on their faces were worth $1 million. I bought Sunset Manor 18 months ago, the same week you put me here. I also bought my house back when you sold it. Everything you've been working to rebuild, everything you thought you'd lost, was mine all along. Nathan's jaw dropped. Diana just stared. Why? She whispered. Because I wanted you to understand that love isn't something you withdraw from like a bank account. It's something you invest in day by day, year by year. You can't abandon someone for 18 months and then expect them to solve your problems. I stood up and put my hands on their shoulders. But you've both proven that you understand that now. You've earned your way back into my life and into your inheritance. As I watched my 2 youngest children cry and laugh and hug me tighter than they had since they were small, I knew I'd finally taught them the most important lesson a father can teach. That family is about showing up. Not just when you need something, but especially when you have something to give. My name is Gregory Pierce. I'm 70 years old, and this is how I got my family back. What city are you watching from? I'd love to know how far this story has traveled, because sometimes one story is all it takes to remind someone that it's never too late to come home. The end.